are poems that heal. And poems that haunt. But once, in the early 1900s, a Japanese poet wrote something that could kill. It was said that anyone who read it aloud, even once, would hear a child's voice whispering their name before the week ended. They called it Tomino's Hell. No one remembers where it began, but everyone who's read it remembers how it ends. And tonight, someone will read it again. Chapter 1: The Poem That Kills. Tokyo, a humid spring night. Inside a narrow dormitory room near Shinjuku, a dim lamp flickered weakly, casting yellow shadows across the floor. Aiko sat before her desk, eyes fixed on the laptop screen. The cursor blinked at the top of a dark web page. Title: Tomino's Hell, the Poem That Kills. She hesitated for a long time. Outside, rain whispered against the glass like someone tapping from the other side. Aiko was a literature major. She loved forgotten poetry, old folklore, and the thrill of things half-believed. So when her friend Kenta sent her a link to a forbidden poem, said to kill anyone who read it aloud, she laughed. Greater than just another urban legend, she thought. But that night, curiosity pressed harder than fear. She adjusted her glasses and scrolled down. The poem's first lines were written in Old Japanese, the kind used in Meiji-era verse. It spoke of a child named Tomino, descending into hell with his sister. Each verse was soaked in sorrow, soft, rhythmic, like a lullaby recited by the dead. As Aiko read silently, she felt something tug at her throat, as though the words themselves were alive. Her reflection in the dark window seemed to blink a fraction slower than her real self. Then her laptop flickered. The screen turned black, and for a moment she saw, just barely, a child's face appear in the reflection. Pale, expressionless, eyes completely black. She gasped, slamming the laptop shut. The rain outside grew louder, drumming like footsteps. The next morning, Aiko received a message from Shiori. Greater than, did you hear about Kenta? He's dead. Aiko froze. Greater than, what do you mean? Dead? Greater than, they found him in his apartment. No signs of struggle, just a smile on his face. His computer was still playing that poem you two were talking about. Aiko dropped her phone. From the corner of her room came the faintest whisper. A child's voice, soft and distant. Greater than, you read it too, didn't you? Aiko turned sharply toward the sound. Nothing. Just the rain, still whispering against the window. But when she looked closer, her breath caught. On the fogged glass, written in small, trembling letters, was a single word drawn by an invisible finger. Greater than, Tomino. Chapter 2: The Cursed Video. Kenta's funeral was held on a rainy afternoon. Only a few classmates attended. Most were too frightened to talk about what had happened. Rumors spread quickly through the university that he died reading the Tomino's Hell poem aloud. Aiko sat at the back of the small Buddhist hall, her face pale under the incense smoke. She couldn't stop staring at the photo on the altar. Kenta smiling faintly, eyes half closed, as if still dreaming. When the chanting ended, Shiori approached, trembling. Greater than, Aiko, they say Kenta recorded something before he died. Greater than, what kind of recording? Greater than, a video. On his laptop. The police didn't release it, but someone leaked it online. That night, Aiko locked her door and turned on her computer. Her fingers shook as she typed Tomino's Hell original recording into the search bar. The first link read, Tomino no Jigoku, Kenta's final recitation. The thumbnail froze her breath. Kenta sitting at his desk, reading from a piece of paper, eyes bloodshot, mouth twisted into a half-smile. She hesitated. Her reflection in the black screen seemed to watch her. Then she clicked play. The video began with static. Kenta's voice filled the speakers, soft, unsteady, trembling. Each word of the poem echoed like a prayer spoken underwater. Greater than, Tomino descends into hell with his sister. The weight of sin heavy on his back. Aiko's chest tightened. The video quality glitched. Behind Kenta, a shadow moved, small, like a child passing the doorway. At the timestamp 2:14, Kenta stopped reading. He lifted his head slowly. His eyes met the camera. And in the next second, he smiled. A smile too wide, too still. Then came a whisper, not from his lips, but from behind the microphone. Greater than, keep reading. Dash dash dash. The video ended abruptly. Aiko's screen turned black again. But the reflection staring back at her wasn't her own. It was Kenta's, smiling faintly. Eyes empty. She slammed the laptop shut and staggered backward. Something fell to the floor. A single page of paper that hadn't been there before. She bent down, hands shaking. It was the poem. Written in a child's handwriting. The ink still wet. And beneath the final verse, a new line appeared, one she'd never seen before. Greater than, if you read this to the end, you will meet me. Chapter 3 The Researcher. For 2 nights, Aiko didn't sleep. Kenta's voice echoed in her head whenever she closed her eyes. That last whisper, keep reading. By the 3rd day, she couldn't take it anymore. She went to the university library, searching through the old archives of Japanese literature. If Tomino's hell truly existed before it spread online, there had to be a record somewhere. Hours passed. Finally, deep in the forbidden section of Meiji-era writings, she found it. A thin, dust-covered anthology titled Hell's Garden, collected poems of Inoue Shozo. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside, between fragile pages, lay the original poem, Tomino no Jigoku, Tomino no Jigoku. Below the title, in small brush strokes, was the year, 1919. Inoue Shozo. A poet once praised for his haunting verses, later condemned as mad. According to the notes, he had written Tomino's hell after the death of his 2 children in a fire. He claimed their spirits spoke to him in his sleep, teaching him words that did not belong to the living. The final record of him read simply, greater than, July 1920, self-immolation within his home. No remains of the manuscript were found. Aiko's stomach turned cold. If the manuscript was never recovered, what was the version circulating online? When she returned to her dorm, a man was waiting near the entrance. An elderly monk in a faded gray robe, holding a wooden prayer bead. Greater than, Miss Aiko Takahashi? Yes. My name is Kun. I was a student of Professor Shozo's disciple. You've read the poem, haven't you? Aiko froze. How do you know that? The monk sighed. Greater than, because your eyes have already dimmed. The Curse of Tomino is not a story. It is a ritual. The poem was never meant to be read aloud. Each line is an invocation. Each verse a gate to a different hell. He gave her a small wooden rosary. The beads cold as bone. Greater than, if you still hear his voice, don't answer. If you see the child, don't follow. And above all, never read it to the end. Before she could respond, the monk bowed deeply and turned away. His figure fading into the fog like a shadow that had been waiting for centuries. That night, as Aiko sat on her bed clutching the rosary, the silence of her room was so deep it hurt. Then, a knock. 3 slow taps at her window. She turned. Behind the fogged glass stood a small boy in a red kimono. Smiling faintly. Greater than, good evening, sister. Chapter 4 The 7th Gate. Aiko hadn't stepped outside for 3 days. She barely ate, barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the boy in the red kimono. His face pale, his lips forming words she couldn't hear but somehow understood. Each whisper seemed to draw her closer to something she couldn't name. On the 4th night, the rosary the monk had given her began to tremble in her hand. The beads were cold, pulsing faintly, as if beating to a heart that wasn't hers. Outside, the rain had stopped. The entire dormitory was silent, too silent. Then came the voice. Not from her phone, not from outside. It rose inside her head. Greater than, Aiko, open the gate. Her eyes shot open. The reflection in the mirror across the room shimmered. Through the glass, she saw not her own dorm, but a corridor made of black stone, lined with paper talismans written in ancient kanji, fluttering in a wind that didn't exist. Dash dash dash. Heart pounding, she stepped closer. The moment her fingers brushed the mirror, the surface rippled like water. A freezing pull yanked her inside. For an instant, she couldn't breathe. Then her feet touched the ground again. Stone cold, slick with something that smelled of metal and decay. She was standing in a tunnel. Faint red lanterns lit the path ahead. At the far end, a massive door loomed, carved with 7 symbols that pulsed like open wounds. Greater than the 7 gates of hell, she whispered. And from the darkness behind her, the child's voice answered, soft and almost sweet. Greater than, we've already opened 6. Dash dash dash. Aiko turned. Tomino stood a few feet away. Up close, his eyes weren't black, they were empty, like holes in the world. His smile was small but wrong, too steady, too calm. Greater than, why me? She asked. Because you read it, he said, and because you didn't stop. He tilted his head, curious, like a cat. Greater than, do you want to see what happens when the 7th gate opens? Dash dash dash. The air thickened. Whispers filled the corridor, hundreds of voices calling her name. Some begged, some cried, some laughed. Each one sounded like someone she'd known, her classmates, her parents, even Kenta. She covered her ears, but the whispers pressed closer, like a living fog. The stone walls pulsed, heartbeat after heartbeat. And the great door at the end began to open. Just a crack. From inside came a light that wasn't light at all. A deep red glow that burned her eyes and filled her lungs with heat. Greater than, stop, she screamed. You can't open it. Tomino smiled wider. Greater than, it's already open, sister. The door split in 2 with a deafening crack. A surge of air slammed into her, hot, metallic, and screaming. For a heartbeat, she saw shapes moving in the red glow, faces twisted in agony, reaching toward her. Then everything went black. Dash dash dash. When Aiko woke, she was back in her dorm. Her mirror lay shattered on the floor. Every shard reflected the same thing, the door. And from somewhere deep within the glass, a child whispered, calm and certain. Greater than, one more gate left. Chapter 5 The Blood Mirror. When Aiko woke up, dawn was already bleeding through the curtains. Her body ached, her head throbbed. She blinked, trying to recall what had happened. The stone tunnel, the red light, the 7th gate. It had to be a dream. But then she saw the mirror, shattered into 100 pieces across the floor. Each fragment reflected something different. Some showed her room. Some showed the tunnel. In one shard, she saw Tomino standing in the doorway. Dash dash dash. Aiko crawled back, heart hammering. Her hand brushed against something wet. When she looked down, her fingers were streaked with red blood, but not hers. She stumbled to her feet. The walls were clean. The mirror fragments, however, pulsed faintly, as if each shard contained a heartbeat. When she leaned closer, she heard whispers leaking from the glass. Greater than, help me. Sister. Read again. Aiko covered her ears. No, no more. She snatched the monk's rosary from her desk and held it tight. Leave me alone. The beads grew hot, too hot to touch, then cracked. A faint child's laugh filled the room. Greater than, you broke it. Aiko, that was the last seal. Dash dash dash. Her phone buzzed suddenly. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. A voice whispered through the speaker. Hoarse, male, and oddly familiar. Greater than, Aiko, don't believe him. Kenta? She gasped. Greater than, he wants you to open the last gate. Don't let him trick you. It's not freedom he wants. It's replacement. Static crackled. Then another voice, higher, gentler, cut in over his. Greater than, he's lying. Her phone went dead. Aiko stared at the screen. For a split second before it turned black. She saw her own face reflected back at her. but with Tomino's eyes. That night, she threw a blanket over the broken mirror and tried to sleep. The dorm was quiet. Too quiet. At 3:07 a.m., she woke to the sound of dripping water. Drip. 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 She turned on her lamp. The sound wasn't coming from the sink. It was coming from beneath the blanket. Her throat went dry. Slowly, she lifted the fabric. The mirror shards had fused together, forming one solid surface again. But instead of her reflection, the glass was red, like it was filled with liquid. Blood rippled across it, moving like waves. And then she saw a face beneath the surface. Pale, small, smiling. Greater than Aiko. It's beautiful down here. The blood began to seep out from the frame, dripping onto the floor, crawling toward her feet like living veins. She backed away, trembling. But her reflection didn't move. It smiled wider and whispered from inside the mirror. Greater than, come closer. You're the last one who can read it. The mirror vibrated. Aiko screamed as it shattered again. This time exploding outward, shards slicing the air like knives. One piece grazed her cheek. Warm blood ran down her face. But when it touched the floor, it didn't pool. It moved, slithering back toward the mirror frame. Each droplet merged into words across the glass, forming a single glowing line. Greater than, the sixth gate is open. Aiko collapsed to her knees. Her hands trembled, slick with her own blood. The voice of Tomino echoed around her room, everywhere and nowhere at once. Greater than, you're almost there, sister. Just one more gate, and you'll see my world. She looked up, breath shaking. The mirror was gone. Only the words remained, burned into the wall like scars. Chapter 6: The Voice of Tomino. That night, Tokyo was silent. Too silent. Aiko sat by her desk, the monk's rosary resting beside her laptop. The scent of sandalwood still lingered in the air from when she last prayed. But it did nothing to calm the cold rising in her chest. Outside, the rain began again, soft, steady, almost rhythmic. She turned off the light, leaned against the window, and closed her eyes. That was when she heard it. A voice. Small, childlike. Greater than, Aiko, sister? Her eyes snapped open. No one. The lamp was still off, the curtain still drawn. She whispered to herself, trembling. Greater than, you're not real. You're just in my head. But the voice came again, this time from inside the room. Greater than, I'm real. Because you said my name. The sound was everywhere, on the walls, under the bed, in her lungs. It wasn't loud, but it vibrated, like a hum she could feel in her bones. Her throat closed up. She grabbed the rosary, pressing it against her chest. Om, Tomino, Nama. The air thickened. The lamp flickered violently. The black cloth covering the mirror began to move, as if something was crawling underneath. Greater than, don't be afraid. The child's voice whispered. I just want to talk. I'm lonely. Her lips trembled. What do you want, Tomino? Greater than, to be free. But to be free, someone has to read the last line. Her phone buzzed on the desk. The screen lit up, unknown number. She froze, then, against her better judgment, answered. Static filled her ear. Then came the soft, wavering voice of a little boy reciting the poem. Greater than, Tomino descends into hell with his sister. Eyes wet with tears, voice trembling. She dropped the phone, but the voice continued, pouring from the speaker even though the call had ended. With every verse, the lights dimmed further. When the final line was spoken, the entire room went dark. She could hear breathing. Right beside her. Cold air brushed her neck. Then, a small hand rested on her shoulder. Her pulse stopped. Greater than, you've already read half. Sister. Keep going, only 2 gates left. Aiko screamed and switched on her phone's flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness. But there was no one there. Only a bloody handprint on her sleeve. Dash dash dash. The next morning, she stumbled into class, pale and shaking. Shiori gasped when she saw her. Aiko, what happened to your neck? Aiko rushed to the restroom mirror and froze. 5 red marks were burned into her skin, as if someone had grabbed her throat in the night. She scrubbed and scrubbed, but the marks wouldn't fade. And then she saw it. In the mirror, behind her reflection, Kenta was standing there. His eyes were blank, his mouth curved into a broken smile. Greater than Aiko, he won't stop. Tomino doesn't want freedom. He wants someone to take his place. Before she could move, his reflection shattered like glass. Dash dash dash. That night, Aiko couldn't sleep. She opened Kenta's old recording, the one the police had found. She played it again, desperate to understand. In the final seconds, after Kenta stopped reading, a faint child's giggle echoed. Then, beneath it, came another voice, soft, female. It was her own. Greater than, take me deeper. Aiko's heart seized. She never said that, but the voice was undeniably hers. From outside her window came 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate. Cock, COC, COC. She turned. Through the rain, a small boy stood on the pavement below. Kimono red, soaked to the bone. He looked up at her window and smiled. Greater than, you've opened the 4th gate, sister. Dash dash dash. Aiko collapsed to her knees, trembling. The rosary rolled across the floor, scattering beads everywhere. They formed a perfect circle. From its center, the wood began to crack, and black liquid oozed out like ink. Then came the voice, half child, half something ancient. Greater than, if you want to save yourself, come to where I was born. That's where hell begins. The air fell silent. Only the wind chime on her balcony swayed, ringing 7 times. Dash dash dash. At sunrise, Aiko stood by the station. In her trembling hand was an old train ticket to Fukuoka, Tomino's birthplace. Across the ticket, written in dried blood, were 5 words. Greater than, the 5th gate awaits you. She stared at it, eyes hollow, whispering to herself. Greater than, if you want me, Tomino, I'll find you in hell. Chapter 7 The Dead Letter. 3 days passed since the night Aiko heard Tomino's voice in the rain. She moved like a sleepwalker, her eyes hollow, her movements slow. Each time she blinked, she saw flashes of that world. A misty corridor, a child's smile, a hand reaching through the dark. She began dreaming of a road shrouded in fog, lined with 100 rusted iron doors. Each time she opened one, a child laughed, then cried. When she woke, new bruises appeared on her wrists, shaped like tiny hands. Dash dash dash. On the morning of the 3rd day, Aiko found a letter slipped under her door. The envelope was old and yellowed, its edges flaking like ash. No sender's name. Just 4 inked characters on the front. Greater than Atena. Aiko to Aiko. Her hands trembled as she turned it over. The handwriting was familiar. Kenta's. She tore it open. Inside was a brittle sheet of paper, folded many times. The moment she touched it, the faint scent of burned wood filled the air. When she unfolded it, her heart froze. It was the original poem. Written by hand, in ancient brushstrokes. The exact poem from Inoue Shozo's lost manuscript. At the bottom, in faint, trembling ink, was one final line scrawled in desperation. Greater than, return this to Tomino. If you don't, the 6th gate will open. Dash dash dash. Aiko gasped and dropped the letter. The paper hit the floor, then vanished. She blinked. Now, sitting on her desk, was a different envelope. Still warm. She picked it up. This one was newer, and written in messy, rushed handwriting. Greater than, Aiko. If you're reading this, I'm still down here. Her blood ran cold. It was from Kenta. She read on, hands shaking. Greater than, Tomino won't let me leave. He says I never finished the poem. He says you're the only one who can read the last line. Don't do it, Aiko. Don't finish it. If you do, you'll take my place. The ink at the bottom blurred, as if soaked by tears. Or blood. Below the last line, a child-sized handprint was pressed in dark red. Aiko's eyes burned. "Idiot," she whispered. "You should have stopped." She rushed to the nearest post office, clutching both letters. An elderly clerk examined them, squinting at the faded stamps. "Strange," he muttered. "These markings, these are from the Taisho era." Aiko frowned. "What year?" The man pointed to the seal. "Greater than Da Zheng Jun Nian Chi Yu, July, year 9 of the Taisho era, 1920. Her stomach dropped. That was the year Inoue Shozo had died. That night, when she returned to her dorm, the same envelope was waiting on her desk. The paper was fresh again, still warm to the touch. Inside was a black and white photograph. It showed a young boy sitting on wooden steps, holding a cracked porcelain doll. Behind him stood a woman in a white kimono, her face scratched out. On the back, written in dried blood, "Greater than, the sixth gate lies within the mother." Around midnight, soft crying filled the hallway. Not one voice, but dozens, children weeping in unison. The sound seeped through the walls. And beneath it, she heard her own name whispered again and again. "Greater than, Aiko. Why won't you give him back?" Her rosary snapped. Each bead cracked open, spilling desiccated insect shells onto the floor. The smell of decay filled the air. Aiko clutched her head, screaming. But the moment she did, every door in the dorm swung open at once. At the far end of the hall, Kenta's old room stood wide open. Inside was pitch black. The air reeked of soot and rot. A single candle sat on the desk, its flame faint and trembling. On the wall above it, scrawled in blood, "Greater than, read it, Aiko. The sixth gate awaits." The candlelight flickered violently. The lost poem appeared on the desk again, glowing faintly red. The whispering grew louder, Tomino's voice, clear this time, echoing from every direction. "Greater than, you've read my letter. Now, read my words." Aiko dropped to her knees. Tears streaked down her face as she shook her head. "Please, stop, I just wanted to end." "Greater than, then read," Tomino said. "The last gate opens with you." The poem's ink began to move, twisting like blood alive. The lines crawled up the wall, merging into a face. Tomino's, smiling, eyes hollow. "Greater than, keep reading, Aiko. The gate is open." Chapter 8: The Forgotten Orphan. The next thing Aiko remembered was waking up on the floor of Kenta's burned-out room. The candle was gone. The walls were clean. Only the faint smell of smoke lingered. Her head pounded. She tried to stand, but her knees buckled. When she opened her eyes again, the world around her had changed. The dorm was gone. She stood in a vast, gray field, under a sky heavy with black clouds. Cold wind swept through rows of prayer stones. Each one bore a name that had been crossed out with red ink. And in the distance, a small house stood alone. Aiko felt it before she saw it. A pulse, slow and rhythmic, coming from within the earth itself. She walked toward the house. Every step echoed like a heartbeat. Inside, dust filled the air like ash. On the walls hung drawings made by a child. Scribbles of a boy, a mother, and a sister. But every face had been scratched out violently. In the corner of the room sat a small wooden chest. She knelt and opened it. Inside was a set of tiny bones, a cracked porcelain doll, and a folded page covered in bloodstains. The handwriting was old, faint, trembling. "Greater than, forgive me, my child. Forgive me, Tomino. I could not save you." Aiko's throat tightened. Her eyes burned as she whispered. "Greater than, this was, his home." The air grew colder. From behind her came the sound of footsteps, bare feet on wood. Slow, soft. She turned around. A child stood in the doorway, wearing a red kimono, his hair dripping water that never touched the floor. "Tomino." But his expression wasn't cruel. It was sad. Greater than, she left me here, he said softly. She said she would come back. But the gates closed before she did. Aiko's voice shook. Greater than, your mother? He nodded slowly. Greater than, she was the first to read the poem. Images flooded Aiko's mind. A woman in white kneeling by candlelight, writing verses while a child screamed in the dark. Each line of the poem carved into her skin like pen strokes. Each tear she shed became a verse of hell. Greater than, she wanted to lock my voice away. Tomino whispered. She said my words killed people. Aiko covered her mouth, horrified. Greater than, did they? He smiled sadly. Greater than, I only said what I saw. I told her about the fire before it happened. I told her about her death before it came. Greater than, she called it a curse. But I was only telling the truth. The house trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. Through the window, Aiko saw the sky tear open, revealing flashes of red light, and 1,000 paper charms bursting into flames. Greater than, you see now, Tomino said. I wasn't born from hell. Hell was born from me. Aiko took a step forward. Then why haunt us? Why make others suffer? The boy's smile faded. Greater than, because I'm still waiting. For her. For my mother. He raised his hand. The air twisted violently. The walls of the house peeled away, revealing rows of iron gates stretching into infinity. Each gate bore a name written in black blood, and one of them glowed faintly, Aiko. She fell to her knees. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered. Greater than, Tomino, what do you want from me? He stepped closer. The temperature dropped until her breath turned to frost. He reached out a hand, small, trembling, cold. Greater than, to remember me, he said. Because everyone else forgot. Aiko looked into his eyes. And for a split second, saw the boy he used to be. Lonely, terrified, still waiting for someone to love him. Then his hand touched her forehead. A flood of visions ripped through her mind. Flames, screams, a woman chained to an altar. And a voice, soft, broken, whispering. Greater than, Tomino, forgive me. When Aiko opened her eyes, she was standing in front of an ancient shrine. Her ears rang, her vision blurred. The sign above the entrance was written in faded kanji. Greater than Meizai-no-Terra Temple of Sins. The wind howled. The gates behind her slammed shut. Tomino's voice echoed in the air, calm and distant. Greater than, you found her, sister. Now let's wake her up. Chapter 9 The Temple of Sins. Aiko stood before the shrine, its entrance swallowed by shadow. The wooden pillars were wrapped in talismans, each one blackened and brittle with age, each inscribed with a single word, Zui Sin. The heavy doors groaned as she pushed them open. A blast of cold air swept out. Not wind, but something older, something that remembered. Inside, the air was thick with incense and rot. Candles burned in uneven rows along the stone path, their flames trembling like frightened hearts. And far ahead, through the haze, she saw 7 gates built into the walls, each carved from a different metal, each humming faintly with sound. Whispers leaked through the cracks. Greater than, welcome back, Aiko. Her pulse quickened. She turned, but the doors behind her had already sealed shut. A figure waited near the center of the hall. A woman in a white kimono, kneeling before an altar. Chains wrapped around her wrists and ankles, their links embedded into the stone floor. Aiko could feel her presence long before she dared to look. Greater than, mother? The woman didn't move. The air shimmered around her like heat above a flame. When she finally lifted her head, Aiko saw that her eyes had been sewn shut with thin golden thread. Greater than, you came, the woman whispered, her voice trembling. I've waited so long. Aiko stepped closer, heart pounding. Are you, Tomino's mother? The woman nodded slowly. I am the one who wrote his hell. Aiko's breath caught. Why? Why would you write something like that? Greater than, because words were the only thing I had left. Tomino was born cursed, he spoke before he could walk. And every word he uttered brought death. The woman's chained hands trembled. Greater than, I wanted to silence his tongue, not his soul. So I gave his voice a prison, the poem. I thought I was saving him. She smiled faintly, bitterly. Greater than, but I only built him a hell he could never leave. The ground beneath Aiko rumbled. From the first of the 7 gates came a blinding red light. Inside, faint shapes twisted, faces, limbs, eyes. Each gate pulsed like a heartbeat. Greater than, every verse I wrote became a gate, the woman said. Each one tied to a sin of the living. And now, each one opens with a reader's voice. Aiko backed away, terrified. Then all the people who read it, greater than, became its keepers. The woman tilted her head upward. And though her eyes were sealed, tears of blood slipped down her cheeks. Greater than, and you, Aiko, are the last. The candles flared. Aiko felt something crawl under her skin. A burning sensation, like invisible words carving themselves into her flesh. She looked down. Lines of the poem were etching across her arms, glowing faintly red. Greater than, no, she gasped. Make it stop. Greater than, it cannot be stopped. The woman said softly. You've spoken too many lines. She reached out a chained hand toward Aiko. Greater than, but you can finish it. You can end the cycle. Only the reader can release the voice. The floor cracked. Chains tightened around the woman's body, pulling her back toward the altar. She cried out, not in pain, but in sorrow. Greater than, he's coming. He knows you're here. Aiko turned toward the sound of footsteps echoing down the temple hall. Through the smoke and light, Tomino appeared. His red kimono brighter than blood, his face calm and unreadable. Greater than, sister, he said softly. You found her. Aiko stood between him and his mother. Tomino, stop, she tried to save you. His eyes darkened. Greater than, she killed me. The walls shook. The 7 gates blazed open, one by one. Screams, prayers, and laughter poured out, filling the temple with chaos. Greater than, you see? Tomino whispered. Her love built this place. He looked up at the ceiling. Greater than, now let's finish what she started. The mother cried out, her chains snapping one by one. She reached toward Aiko, desperate. Greater than, don't listen to him. If you finish the poem, you'll take my place. Aiko staggered backward, trapped between them. A mother begging for forgiveness. A son begging for release. The temple floor split apart, revealing a chasm of red light below. From its depths rose the voices of countless souls, whispering, chanting. Greater than, read. 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 Aiko covered her ears, but the words echoed inside her skull. Tomino stepped closer, smiling. Greater than, you don't have to fear, sister. Hell isn't a place. It's a story. And you're the next verse. Chapter 10, The Descent. The temple collapsed around her. The air screamed. Candles burst, talismans tore from the walls, and the earth split open beneath Aiko's feet. She fell. Not downward, but through layers of sound. Through whispers, prayers, and the unending hum of thousands of voices reading the same poem at once. When she finally stopped falling, she found herself standing on a path made of cracked stone, floating in a red fog. Above her, there was no sky, only an endless, shifting mass of faces, crying, whispering, watching. Everywhere she turned, eyes followed her. Aiko took a breath. The air tasted like metal and smoke. Her reflection flickered in the crimson mist beside her. But it wasn't her reflection anymore. The figure mimicked her movements. Then smiled, a second too late. Greater than, welcome to my world, said Tomino's voice, echoing from all directions. The path ahead twisted like a serpent. Each step she took made the ground pulse with light. Symbols appeared beneath her feet, verses of the poem, glowing red. She whispered, trembling. Greater than, what is this place? Greater than, it's what every reader builds for me. Tomino replied. Every time someone speaks my name, they add another brick to my hell. Dash dash dash. She walked forward. The mist parted, revealing 7 great doors, floating in the void. Behind each door, faint screams echoed. The first door swung open by itself. Inside, she saw children kneeling in endless rows. Their mouths sewn shut, their eyes turned toward the ceiling. Above them, words burned into the air, the gate of speech. Tomino's voice whispered near her ear. Greater than, every tongue that spoke the poem feeds this gate. She covered her mouth, trembling. Greater than, this is madness. Greater than, no, sister, this is language. Dash dash dash. The second gate opened. A river of ink flowed through it, thick, black, endless. From the current, she saw memories drifting by. The faces of readers, all mouthing the same lines she once read. Their bodies were thin, their eyes empty. Their mouths opened in a scream they could never finish. Greater than, each of them thought it was just a poem. Tomino said softly. But every word was a sin, and every sin needed a voice. Aiko clutched her chest. Her heart felt too heavy, like something was growing inside it. A seed of the same voice. Dash dash dash. She reached the third gate. Behind it lay an infinite staircase spiraling downward. Shadows moved along the walls, thin, twitching, crawling on all fours. Each whisper sounded like her own thoughts, turned inside out. Greater than, you're not saving anyone. One voice hissed. You wanted to read it. You wanted to know. Aiko pressed her hands over her ears, crying out. But the voices grew louder, fusing into a single sound, her name, repeated endlessly. Greater than, Aiko, Aiko, Aiko. She stumbled, fell to her knees. Blood dripped from her nose. The ground pulsed like living flesh. Then came Tomino's voice again. Calm, gentle, almost loving. Greater than, don't fight it, sister. Every descent is just a memory of being born. Dash dash dash. Aiko screamed, why me? Why choose me? Greater than, because you listened. The mist shifted. Out of it came the image of her younger self. Kneeling in the same shrine she'd visited as a child. Reciting the same old poem she never remembered learning. She froze. Greater than, that's impossible. Tomino appeared beside the image. His face soft, innocent. Greater than, you've been reading me your whole life. The sky above cracked. Flashes of blue and red lightning tore through the fog. And for a moment she saw the outline of a massive circle beneath her feet. The seventh gate, still closed, pulsing like a heart. Greater than, this is where you stop, or this is where you stay, Tomino said. Aiko clenched her fists. Tears streaked her face. Greater than, then I'll go all the way. If this is hell, I'll walk through it. Dash dash dash. She stepped toward the final gate. Her hands burned as she touched it. Symbols flared under her skin. And the ground began to rise, swallowing her in light and ash. Tomino smiled faintly. Greater than, you're brave, sister. But every courage has a cost. The gate burst open. Aiko was pulled inside. Not falling, not flying. Just becoming part of the light. And as the world dissolved around her, she heard one last whisper, so soft it felt like a memory. Greater than, welcome home. Chapter 11, The Hell of Tongues. The light faded. When Aiko opened her eyes, she was kneeling on a floor made entirely of mirrors. Each one reflected her from a slightly different angle. 1,000 Aikos, each with a slightly different expression. The air vibrated with whispers. They weren't echoes, they were words. Every syllable she had ever spoken, every lie, every plea, every whisper of fear. They were alive, crawling back to her through the glass. Greater than, welcome to the hell of tongues, said Tomino's voice. This is where every word you've ever said remembers you. Dash dash dash. Aiko rose to her feet, dizzy. The ground rippled beneath her as if it were breathing. Reflections flickered, some of them smiled, some screamed. One of them, though, just stared back at her, silent. Greater than, I didn't mean any of it, she whispered. Her reflection tilted its head. Then it spoke in her own voice, cold, perfect. Greater than, but you said it. Aiko stumbled backward. Her own words began to echo from the mirrors around her, growing louder, sharper, overlapping. A choir of every regret she'd ever uttered. Greater than, I hate this. Leave me alone. I wish I'd never met you. Each line struck her like a knife. She fell to her knees, clutching her ears, but the voices only grew louder. Dash dash dash. Suddenly, the reflections began to bleed. Crimson spread across the mirrored floor, forming shapes, mouths opening and closing, whispering without sound. Tongues stretched out from the glass, thin and slick like serpents, reaching for her ankles. Aiko screamed and stumbled back. The tongues coiled around her wrists, her neck, dragging her toward the floor. Greater than, you gave them life, Tomino said softly. Every word has weight, every word has blood. She struggled, gasping. Stop it, I never wanted this. Greater than, but you spoke it. Words can't be taken back. Dash dash dash. The tongues tightened, pulling her down. Her reflection beneath the glass smiled up at her. Its eyes hollow, its mouth stretching wider than human. Then, in her own voice, it whispered. Greater than, you're only alive because your words remember you. The glass cracked. Aiko fell through. She landed in a vast cavern of mirrored pillars, each one carved with thousands of names and phrases. Every surface glowed faintly, whispering to itself. She approached one pillar, and froze when she saw Kenta's name carved into it. Beneath it, a single line. Greater than, he read for her. Dash dash dash. Her knees buckled. She pressed her forehead to the ground. Please, she whispered, let me save him. Greater than, you can't, said Tomino, appearing behind her. He gave his tongue for you. That's why you still have yours. He stepped closer. His breath was cold, his words almost gentle. Greater than, but if you truly want to save him, you can give yours in return. Aiko looked up. Her reflection stared back from 1,000 angles, each one bleeding, each one mouthing her name. She clenched her jaw. Greater than, then take it. Tomino smiled, small, tender, almost sad. He reached out a hand. Greater than, sister, you'll finally be silent. Dash dash dash. The world darkened. Aiko felt something cold touch her throat. She didn't scream. She just closed her eyes. When she opened them again, the mirrors were gone. The floor was stone, and the air was still. She reached up to touch her neck. No wound, no blood. But when she tried to speak, no sound came out. Tomino's voice echoed in her mind, calm and close. Greater than, now you understand, sister. Hell isn't fire. Hell is the sound that never stops. Dash dash dash. She looked down at her hands. The lines of the poem were still glowing faintly. But one verse had changed. It now read, greater than, when the tongue falls silent, the heart begins to burn. Aiko lifted her head. And before her, a staircase of light unfolded, leading deeper into the dark. At its base, she saw a faint, flickering glow, and the silhouette of a woman in chains. Chapter 12 The Mother in Chains. The stairs of light faded beneath her feet. When Aiko reached the bottom, the air grew heavy, thick with the scent of rust and ash. A vast underground chamber stretched before her, lit only by a pale, trembling glow. At the center stood an altar, and before it, a woman chained to the floor. The chains were black iron, wound around her wrists and throat, their ends buried deep into the stone. Her long hair spilled like ink, and the white kimono she wore had turned gray with age and soot. Aiko approached slowly, her footsteps echoing in the hollow space. Greater than, who are you? She whispered, though her voice was only thought now. Silent words inside her mind. The woman stirred. Her face lifted, and for the first time, Aiko saw her clearly. It was Tomino's mother. Greater than, so, you found me, the woman said softly. After all these years. Her voice was a fragile melody, cracked by sorrow. Greater than, I am the writer. The one who built this hell. Aiko trembled. Why? She whispered in her mind. Why would you write it? The woman smiled weakly, her lips pale. Greater than, because I wanted to save my child. Tomino was born with a voice that called the dead. Every time he spoke, the world answered, and the living began to die. Her eyes, sunken and bright, stared past Aiko, into memory. Greater than, I thought, if I wrote a poem strong enough to contain his words, I could keep him safe. So I gave him a prison made of ink. The air shivered. The chains clinked faintly as if remembering each sin. Greater than, but the poem grew hungry. She continued. It fed on every voice that spoke it. It grew larger, darker, until even I was swallowed. Aiko's chest tightened. She wanted to cry, but no sound came. Only silence, heavy and endless. The woman turned to her. Her gaze was not angry. It was loving. Greater than, he thinks I abandoned him, she said softly. But I never did. I stayed here, holding the gates closed, so no one else would fall. Aiko's thoughts quivered. Greater than, then let me free you. The woman smiled faintly. Greater than, if you break my chains, the poem will end, but I will vanish with it. The air thickened. The altar began to tremble. Lines of ancient text burned across the walls, each verse of Tomino's hell glowing in red fire. Greater than, it must be finished, the woman whispered. Read the final line for me. Aiko hesitated. The words were carved into the stone before her. Greater than, when the mother stops singing, the hell will fall silent. She pressed her palms together. Tears spilled down her face. And though her voice was gone, the words echoed inside her mind, rippling through the chamber like waves of light. The chains shattered. The woman gasped as the bindings melted away. The glow around her body flared, white, pure, blinding. The altar cracked open, and the burning text turned to ash. The woman smiled through her tears. Greater than, thank you, Aiko. Tell him, I never stopped loving him. Then her body dissolved into dust, rising upward in a storm of shimmering fragments. Only a single wooden prayer bead remained, rolling to Aiko's feet. She knelt and picked it up. One character was engraved on it, New Mother. A faint light bloomed at the far end of the chamber. A child's voice spoke softly. Greater than, sister, you did it. Aiko turned. Tomino stood in the light, smiling for the first time. His red kimono was gone. He looked peaceful, like any other child. Greater than, she's free now, Aiko said. He nodded. Greater than, and so am I. The light around him grew brighter, almost too bright to look at. Greater than, where will you go? Aiko asked. Greater than, to a place without words, he said. Where silence is home. The light consumed him. The chains vanished. The chamber crumbled into dust. And for the first time in 100 years, the hell of Tomino fell silent. Chapter 13: The Return. Aiko awoke to the sound of birds. Soft morning light seeped through the hospital curtains. For a long moment, she couldn't tell if she was still dreaming. White walls. The faint hum of machines. And next to her bed, a familiar face, Shiori, her best friend, asleep on her folded arms. Aiko blinked. Her throat was dry. Shiori? Shiori stirred, eyes wide when she saw her awake. Greater than, Aiko. Oh my god, you're alive. You were unconscious for 2 days. 2 days? Aiko whispered. It felt like a lifetime. Greater than, yeah, Shiori said softly. They found you in the old dorm. You were alone. The police said the fire started again, but somehow your room didn't burn. Aiko stared past her, toward the window. Outside, sunlight glimmered over Tokyo's skyline, The world looked perfectly normal. Too normal. When she was discharged, Aiko returned to campus. The building stood just as she remembered, though the top floors were now sealed off with yellow tape. Shiori walked beside her, nervously glancing around. Hey, maybe you shouldn't be here, she said. There's something off about this place. Even the guards say they still hear voices at night. Aiko smiled faintly. Voices don't scare me anymore. She reached into her pocket. The wooden prayer bead, her only proof the journey had been real, was still there. Faintly worn to the touch. That night, back in her dorm, Aiko stood before the mirror. The room was quiet except for the wind outside. Her reflection looked calm, peaceful. Almost too peaceful. She whispered to herself. It's over. But the reflection didn't move. Its lips stayed still. Then, slowly, it smiled. Aiko froze. Her breath caught in her chest. The reflection leaned forward, its lips parting slightly. No sound came out, but she read the words clearly. Thank you. And for a heartbeat, she saw a small boy standing behind the reflection. Wearing a red kimono, smiling gently. Aiko stumbled back. The mirror shimmered, then went still again. Her room was empty. No child, no sound. She exhaled shakily, half laughing, half crying. Just my imagination, she whispered. But as she turned away, something glinted in the corner of the mirror. A single, faintly glowing kanji etched into the glass. Zhang the end. The next morning, Shiori knocked on Aiko's door. No answer. She waited, then tried the handle, unlocked. Inside, the bed was neatly made. The window was open, the wind blowing the curtains gently. On the desk sat a folded note beside the wooden bead. Shiori unfolded it. The handwriting was Aiko's. Hell only exists while someone remembers it. Don't forget Tomino. Don't let him be alone again. Shiori's hands trembled. Outside, a faint sound drifted through the air. The laughter of a child, echoing somewhere far below. Chapter 14. The Last Reader. Tokyo's night was still and airless. In a small apartment on the 8th floor of a Shinjuku tower, a young man sat alone at his desk, scrolling through his laptop. The glow of the screen painted his face a sickly blue. He wasn't looking for trouble, only distraction. Midnight YouTube rabbit holes, urban legends, horror channels. Then, one thumbnail stopped him cold. A girl reads Tomino's Hell, original 1920 recording. He frowned. A video uploaded just hours ago, already flooded with warnings in the comments. Don't watch it with headphones. If you hear the child at 2:14, stop. She's looking right at me. He smirked. Creepy internet hoaxes. He muttered. Then he clicked play. Static filled the screen. A blurry image emerged. A girl sitting cross-legged in a dim room. Wearing a white kimono. Her face was calm. Her eyes were fixed directly on the camera. The man leaned closer. The girl began to recite softly, her voice delicate but strained. Tomino descends into hell with his sister, carrying the weight of sin upon his back. The sound was wrong. It didn't echo like normal audio. It felt as if the voice came from inside his headphones, whispering behind his ears. He adjusted the volume. At 2:14, the video glitched. The girl's eyes lifted slowly. And for a split second, someone else appeared behind her. A small boy in a red kimono, smiling faintly. Then came a second voice. A child's whisper. Keep reading. The man froze. The voice hadn't come from the video, it had come from behind him. He yanked off his headphones. Heart hammering, eyes darting around the empty apartment. Silence. When he turned back to the screen, the girl wasn't sitting anymore. She was standing, closer to the camera, her face almost filling the frame. She wasn't smiling. She was staring directly at him. The playback timer was frozen at 2:14. Then, text began to appear across the screen, one letter at a time. Bright red, pulsing like a heartbeat. Greater than, thank you for reading with me. Dash dash dash. He reached for the keyboard to close the browser. The cursor wouldn't move. The keys didn't respond. The screen flickered, once, twice, and went black. In the reflection of the dark monitor, he saw himself. And behind him, a child's face, pale and smiling. Greater than, you're the last one, aren't you? He spun around, nothing there. When he looked back, his reflection was still smiling. But he wasn't. The monitor glowed again. A new line of text appeared, written in trembling white font. Greater than, you've opened the 7th gate. Dash dash dash. The room's temperature dropped. The lights flickered, then died. A low hum filled the air, like 1,000 voices breathing at once. He backed toward the door, but it wouldn't budge. Behind him, the laptop screen burst back to life. The girl in the white kimono was closer now, her face just inches from the camera. Blood ran down her cheek like tears. She whispered softly, her words almost tender. Greater than, don't be afraid. Hell only needs one more voice. The speakers hissed. The boy appeared beside her. They both looked out of the screen. Then the boy smiled. Greater than, read it again. Dash dash dash. The lights exploded. The laptop fell to the ground, still playing. Through the broken glass of the screen, the girl's face flickered one last time. Her lips moved. But this time, the words were directed at us. Greater than, you're reading it now. Silence. That's all that remains when the story ends. A silence too heavy to be peace. Somewhere, a new voice has joined the chorus. A screen flickers. A poem waits, its words still wet with memory. If you've read this far, then you've already opened the 1st gate. Just listen. If you hear a child's laugh behind you, don't turn around.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.